Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another update from Wild Times here in D.C. Let me start with on a tragic note that I'm sure you've all heard about in terms of the death of Justin Fairfax and his wife. I obviously want to hear what happened from the investigation, but I know they were teenage children. I can't believe that this tragedy. You know, I worked closely with Justin for a number of years, and it's a huge loss. And again, my sympathies go out to both his and his wife's family, and we'll all be interested in seeing what the investigation leads to. But it clearly is a horrible tragedy. On the circumstances of Iran, we're now on day 48 of this war of choice. Unfortunately, we have seen, folks, I don't know if you're talking in the background. I hope that's not getting picked up. I can hear it in here. But on the war in Iran, we're in day 48 of Donald Trump's war of choice. I make this comment every time, but it's bearing repeating. There was no imminent threat, so Donald Trump chose to take our country to war. Nothing that has happened since the war started is unexpected. The intelligence was clear that the Iranians would close the Strait of Hormuz, they'd bomb our Gulf allies. The idea that the president somehow was not briefed on that or surprised either shows incompetence of some of his senior intelligence leaders, or the fact that he just didn't tell the truth or doesn't read at all. But the four goals that he laid out, we're not close on any of them. Regime change, actually the current regime is more radical than the previous. Getting rid of the enriched uranium would require minimum of 10,000 troops on the ground surrounding the facility as a perimeter, and then sending special operators in to get the enriched uranium. At any point, the Iranians could shoot missiles into their own facility, which would be a disaster for our troops. We have taken out some of their ballistic missiles, but they still obviously have additional capacity since we saw the shoot down of a couple of our planes. And they still have literally thousands of drones left. One of the things that's so disappointing to me is the Ukrainians, who have mastered how to shoot down Iranian drones because of their own conflict against Russia, since Iran is supplying Russia with drones. President Zelensky offered that technology to America, and we turned them down. Why? And the Strait of Hormuz, it is closed. It will, I believe, stay closed for the foreseeable future. And you know, to kind of add insult to injury, you know, you've got this administration taking sanctions off of Russian oil that's allowed put $10 billion minimum into Vladimir Putin's pocket, which will go into his war machine. And even in a more crazy way, they took sanctions off the Iranian oil that was at sea. So the Iranian regime, based just upon what they were able to sell that oil at market price rather than at the sanction price, that's $14 billion we've given to the Iranians to buy more war materials to attack our troops. I mean, that's beyond crazy. And the economic cost, we are just at the front end of these costs. $4 gas is not going to go away even if the president declares victory tomorrow. The amount of increased cost of shipping through trucks, because they use diesel, you know, diesel's gotten as high as $7 a gallon in some parts of our country. Aluminum costs have gone up. Fertilizer costs are going up. And because this crisis is so much worse in Asia, because they get almost all their oil from the Strait of Hormuz, you're seeing Asian nations shut down their economy one day a week. It means anything we buy is going to go up. So we saw the inflation numbers go above 3% on a 1-month basis last, I think we're going to see inflation. I'm not even going to make a prediction, but it's going to be with us literally for months to come, potentially years to come. And again, if that wasn't, enough, you've got the President of the United States, on Easter morning, using foul language, trashing Iran. You've got later that day, the President of the United States threatening to eradicate the Iranian civilization. 93 million people live in Iran. Is he going to go out and try to kill every one of them? And then, more recently, into the arena of just bizarre, the president picking a fight with the Pope. And then putting forward memes of himself appearing as Jesus. I mean, this is an insult not just to Catholics, not just to Christians. This is an insult to all people of faith. And, and we still have heard virtually nothing from my Republican friends to call out this anti-faith behavior from the President of the United States. Again, I, for one, am embarrassed by his actions. And all of this makes America less safe. When we lose our allies, when we offend the world, those allies aren't going to come to our assistance as much as they should, could, or would have if we'd been able to do this in a smart fashion. I got so caught up on Iran, let me make sure I also hit the last couple of points. Another issue that next week we're going to see a hearing for the president's nominee for the chair of the Federal Reserve, Kevin Warsh. I met with the gentleman. I'll look forward to his presentation. But boy, he's going to have a hard time convincing me, and I think convincing a lot of my colleagues, that he's going to truly be independent. The value of the Fed is its independence. In many ways, thank goodness Jay Powell has been there, because even though the president threatens him with firing all the time, you've got an independent Fed chair, which the rest of the world and other central bankers trust. And that is, I think, helped our economy, helped the markets. Mr. Warsh, who is quite smart, but the idea of what kind of promises he had to make to secure the president's nomination, getting rid of the independence of the Fed at this point would be a disaster. And let me underline that, a disaster for our economy. Finally, on a note that's both positive and also heartfelt, we're coming on the 19th anniversary of the mass killings at Virginia Tech. So Senator Kaine and I are reintroducing our legislation. We call it the Virginia Plan, because we put in place laws that have already passed in Virginia. Things like, one gun a month. Things like closing the boyfriend loophole, trying to make sure that we keep firearms safely locked in a home so they're not accessed to minors. These are sensible laws that have been passed in Virginia that I'd like to see passed at the national level. I'm not sure we'll see them pass because of the debates around Second Amendment and gun ownership, but these are the kind of common sense approaches that we've taken in Virginia that I think would make sense being taken to the federal level. So with that, why don't I go ahead and turn it over to Catherine for your questions.
Our first question is from Mitchell with WTOP.
Hi, Senator. As always, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Ask you a question related to the partial government shutdown. As you know, the budget resolution is going to come up in the House or in the Senate next week, and then Republicans plan to move on to reconciliation. What do you think about the fact that this whole ordeal, which is now over 60 days, could now stretch out for many more weeks, possibly into June.
Well, Mitchell, I don't understand why the House can't take yes for an answer. You know how hard it is to get things passed in the Senate. We passed it 100-0. We would fund all of DHS, including Customs. We wouldn't fund ICE because we've still got a debate about reforms. I hear from Virginians all the time, yes, the Democrats screwed up the border, but that doesn't mean we want ICE agents masked out there picking up people randomly. Over 75% of the people picked up in Virginia have had no other criminal record. And as we saw in Minneapolis, the tragedy of American citizens being killed. So I wish the House would take our solution. Again, 100% of the Republicans voted for it in the Senate. And my fear is, thank goodness the president's figured out a way, whether legal or not, I don't know, to make sure everybody's getting paid. But there's more than just paying our workforce. We've got the World Cup coming up. We've got the 250th anniversary of our nation. A lot of events here in the DMV. At some point, we're going to have to re-question whether all of the safety protocols have been put in place. If we don't have all of these enforcement agencies open. Obviously, ICE is the place we disagree. I'm disappointed we couldn't get reasonable reforms, and most of our reforms are basically, the same rules that apply to the Virginia State Police or that apply to the Fairfax County Police ought to apply to ICE. They don't run around masked. They don't run around hiding their identities. So I'm disappointed and increasingly worried as we get close to these showcase events, a lot of them in the DMV, whether we're going to be able to provide the level of safety and security that we need.
Our next question is from Gabrielle with Nexstar.
Hi, Senator. Thanks for doing this. I wanted to ask you about the rising energy prices. We're having these hearings on the Hill this week about the president's budget, including in that are cuts to programs like LIHEAP. What do you think of those proposed cuts at this time where prices are rising?
There was a lot of interference. Are you saying the president's plan? I've seen nothing the president's done that's going to actually lower energy costs. If anything, I've seen him do things.
Proposed cuts to LIHEAP while these prices are high.
His proposed cuts, I'm sorry, to what?
LIHEAP.
Oh, LIHEAP. Yes. No, I know what LIHEAP. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think it is crazy to cut LIHEAP, which is a program to help poor Americans with their energy costs. You've already got people in need, and now, through no fault of their own, prices are going up on energy because we've got the war of choice that shuts down not just oil, but natural gas. We've got a president that's, we need more electrons, we need more power, yet he doesn't want offshore wind power or solar power. Thank goodness the courts reversed him there. I'm a big advocate that we need to move quicker on bringing about more nuclear power. They're called small modular reactors, 250 to 300 megawatts of power that could be located, particularly in terms of powering data centers, so that the data center power needs are not even reflected on the grid. This all makes sense, but to cut LIHEAP at this point, it's mean-spirited and wrong.
Hi, folks. Just a reminder, too, please, if you are not asking a question, please make sure that your device is muted. You're causing feedback for others on the call. So again, please make sure your device is muted. And then with that, our next question is from Tom with Fox 5.
Senator, thanks for doing the call. Just two quick ones at opposite ends of the spectrum, Senator. Okay. I was wondering if you had any reaction from the news out of Fairfax this morning about the former Lieutenant Governor, Justin Fairfax, apparently involved in a murder-suicide this morning. Also, the Fine Arts Commission took up President Trump's proposal for a triumphal arch on the Virginia side of the Potomac River this morning. And again, acknowledging the difference in these subjects. I was wondering if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, no, I already addressed at the top, Tom, and I'll say it again. What appears to be a murder-suicide where Justin Fairfax and his wife are both dead. It's a huge tragedy. I worked with Justin for years. He was a bright young man, and it's just awful. I know they had teenage kids. My heart goes out to them and both individuals' families. And you know, we're going to need to see from an investigation. But it's just it was shocking. I heard early this morning, and it's again awful and horrible and frankly unbelievable. On the question of the president and his remaking of D.C., you know, I understand that many of the veterans groups are suing the president because this egocentric arch he's building would literally block a lot of Arlington Cemetery. And one of the things that, as somebody that's lived in the region since I was in college, one of the great views in Washington, especially for those of us who live in the region, is to go ahead and take somebody to the back of the Lincoln Memorial and look across the Memorial Bridge, and you see, even though it's quite small, the eternal flame that's at President Kennedy's burial place. I think taking away that view, taking away the view of the cemetery where so many fallen heroes are, is a mistake. And I think, again, this is what happens when you stack a committee, not with independent people, but with sycophants. I would also quickly add, I saw just the other day all of the dirt that's been removed from the, I think now viewed as almost illegal, taking down of the East Wing to build his ballroom, that appears as a big pile on the is it East Potomac, I think it's East Potomac Park golf course. This is why you have commissions, groups, reviews. You don't just, the president doesn't own the White House. He is a part-time occupant of the president's house. It's not his house, it is the people's house, and the president is simply a tenant. And for him to take these actions without the traditional input, I guess I'm not shocked anymore, but it shows his disrespect for history, his disrespect for our heritage and our communities. And again, when we're talking about the arc to Trump, it is really disrespectful to the veterans who are buried in Arlington Cemetery to have that view blocked.
Our next question is from Brianna with 13 News Now.
Hi, Senator. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Hi, Lorraine Lindbergh, WRIC.
Is now exiting. My question kind of does go back
Fitzgerald,
to the now exiting out of Fairfax County this morning. I know you mentioned.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Can you start again? I don't know why when people exit, they're all getting this.
Is now exiting.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Could you ask again? I apologize.
Yeah, of course. So as you've mentioned, you worked closely with former Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax over the years, notably during your reelection campaign. Can you kind of speak more to your relationship, his memory, and just what's kind of going through your head right now following that tragedy this morning?
Probably the biggest memory is, or emotion, is just shock. My understanding is that he and his wife are going through a divorce. I didn't know that. I know how much Justin cared about trying to help young people. I know even after he left politics, he had sponsored a basketball team, I believe, from the Richmond area, from Hampton Roads, and literally, I think, helped pay for them to take a trip to Africa to learn about their own heritage. And, you know, it was a trip of a lifetime. I had a chance to at least see some of the videos of some of the students afterwards. So it's a enormous tragedy. I'm not sure if we'll ever find out all the reasons why, but I am going to look forward to the investigation and what it discovers. But it's a huge tragedy, not only for his family, but I know for the many, many, many Virginians who cared deeply about him.
Our next question is from Noah Kim with WTKR.
Hey, Senator Warner, thank you for your time today. I was wondering to what extent are Norfolk-based Navy assets involved in the current blockade against Iran? And I was also wondering just kind of what your thoughts are if you believe that maybe this move puts a strain on the assets, because this is also just coming as the Gerald R. Ford released aircraft carrier deployment records.
Yeah, as you know, the Ford, I should have mentioned this in the outset, the Ford, I believe today, has now had the longest deployment in modern Navy history. I think about those sailors who originally thought they were going to be in the Mediterranean, then they got sent off the coast of Venezuela, and then they went over to be in the combat zone. There was a major fire on the ship. Thank God nobody was killed, but my understanding is literally there were wounded, and hundreds of sailors didn't have a bunk. So I believe that the carrier is now in Cyprus. This is we are putting such a strain on our service members. They will perform. They have performed. I mean, from the bombing sorties to the rescuing of our pilots, our military is, no one is even close to us, world class. But, even world class, you put people under enormous strain. And what keeps going through my mind is, if you're on the Ford, you've not seen your kids for months on end. You may have missed a birthday or a funeral or important parts of your life. And you hear from your commander-in-chief that, he's just going to feel it in his bones when the right time to declare victory is. What does that say to those sailors? I mean, it's not like here are our military goals and we're going to accomplish them. And the goals they finally laid out, they have not accomplished any of the four. And now the support vessels, I don't have the whole list, but there are a number of them that escorted the Ford, came out of Norfolk. They are still in the combat zone, and without a clear agenda of what would be counted as success, and they just got to wait for the day that Donald Trump wakes up and feels it in his bones that we've won. The thing about this guy is that I don't think he respects virtually anyone. He talks about respecting veterans, yet then he cuts the VA. I think about the new facility that we opened in Spotsylvania, and there was another one that was open in Southampton Roads, world class, but they're not fully staffed yet. Who's going to go work at the VA if you're under the threat of another kind of Doge-like firing? The president says he cares about our troops, yet leaves them on these open-ended deployments and doesn't even articulate to them or to the American public what his goal is here. It seems to have shifted a half a dozen times. The thing I think about Donald Trump that is most maddening to me is he doesn't seem to understand how things are interrelated. If you take and offend all of our NATO allies by having a crazy scheme to try to take over Greenland, and then doesn't understand why everybody doesn't jump to support his war of choice. These are interrelated activities. When he says to the people of Iran in January, when they were out on the streets, you know, we got your back, rise up, we'll support you. And then a couple months later, he threatens to literally destroy the Iranian civilization. You know, he says to the people of Venezuela, we're going to get rid of Maduro. Well, Maduro is gone. But the very people who jailed all of the opposition are still in power. You know, I make a joke at times, it's really hard to make Canadians mad. But when the Prime Minister of Canada thinks that maybe China is a better long-term partner for Canada than America, that is not in America's best interest. And I know you've got a core group of MAGA Trump supporters that won't even be offended when he argues with the Pope and presents himself as a Jesus-like figure. But for the vast majority of Americans, I believe now even the vast majority of Trump supporters, they got to be saying, is this what they wanted? Trump promised no endless wars. He promised lowering prices. He promised a stronger America. Well, prices have gone up. We've got the potential of another land war in the Middle East. And we are weaker because we don't have the strong allies that we had before. And that is all, these are all actions that are based upon the president's own activities. This is not like somebody forced this war on it. It's not like, you know, all of our allies were running away from us on their own. These are all choices made by the President of the United States. And I think the American people and the people of Virginia are going to weigh in, and it raises the other issue. I don't want to go on to this other tangent, but my fear of interference from either the president or some of his sycophant allies to try to come up with excuses to either federalize the elections or delete people from the voter files just because he feels they may not vote for him. And that's why we all have to stand up for our democracy, especially as we get closer to the fall.
Sir, our next question is from Nick with Falls Church News Press. Nick, are you there? Okay, sir. For the final question, I'm going to pass along a question from Mike with WTOP. Could you share a bit more about the East Potomac Park Golf Course and plans to redesign?
Right. You know, I'm not much of a golfer, but I've played the East Potomac Park. I know it is a very accessible public park. I know for a lot of folks in the region, it's got a price point that people can afford. I literally just saw a few days ago the giant pile of dirt on the course. You know, I don't know what the president's plans are. If he's going to improve the park and improve the golf course, fine. But is he going to do it and still keep it at a price point that is affordable for people in the region? I really question that. And again, remember, this is not the Donald Trump, golf course. This is the people's golf course. It is on federal land, and I worry about the fact that I have not seen final plans, and more importantly than the plans, I've not seen at all what kind of fee structure he's going to start to charge. If suddenly the price of playing at East Potomac Park becomes unreachable, you're going to have a lot of young people across the region, not just D.C., but Maryland and Virginia as well, that may never have a chance to pick up golf because they can't find a place that's affordable. So I know we've gone on a little long, everybody, but thanks for hanging in, and have a good weekend. Thanks, everybody.